there, friend. Welcome. Tonight we're stepping into the world of Scream, a film that reshaped horror forever. This isn't just any scary movie. It's a clever, self-aware thriller that mixes fear with fun. So get comfortable, maybe dim the lights, and let's journey into this chilling story together. We begin with an unforgettable, tension-filled opening scene. Meet Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore. She's home alone, getting ready for a cozy night with some popcorn. You can almost hear the soft popping in the background as she grabs the phone. It's a simple, casual call, just some guy asking,
"What's your favorite scary movie?"
It starts off light, almost playful. Casey mentions she likes A Nightmare on Elm Street, but then the caller begins to ask more personal questions. Slowly, the conversation takes a darker turn. Caller asks,
"Do you have a boyfriend?"
She teases, saying she doesn't, and they flirt a bit. Things get darker when the caller says,
"I want to know who I'm looking at."
That line hits like a gut punch. Casey locks the doors, growing more anxious. The caller mocks her attempts to stay calm, and she starts to panic. When she tries to hang up, he calls back immediately, warning her not to hang up again. Then, the stakes are raised. The caller reveals he's watching her and forces her to play a game. She looks outside to see her boyfriend, Steve, tied to a chair on the patio, gagged and helpless. The game? Horror movie trivia. If she answers correctly, Steve might live. The first question.
Who was the killer in Halloween?
Casey answers correctly, Michael Myers. But the next question trips her up.
Who was the killer in the original Friday the 13th?
Confidently, she answers, Jason, but that's the wrong answer. The killer was Jason's mother. Her mistake is fatal. The lights come back on and Casey sees Steve gruesomely disemboweled right before her eyes. The terror escalates. Ghostface tells her the game's not over. Now it's her turn. Casey tries to escape, running through the house as Ghostface breaks in. She grabs a knife but is cornered outside. He catches her and stabs her in the chest. She fights back, struggling to escape, but he's relentless. She's severely injured, but manages to crawl to the front yard. Here's the heart-wrenching part. Casey's parents arrive home just as she's being attacked. She's so close to safety. She tries to scream for help, but her voice is barely a whisper, choked by pain and fear. Ghostface finishes her off, and she collapses, dying within sight of her parents. They find the phone, hear the struggle, and step outside only to find her body hanging from a tree. It's a shocking, gruesome beginning that sets the tone for the rest of the film. This isn't just any slasher. It's one that pulls no punches and plays with your expectations. Now let's meet Sydney Prescott, our protagonist. Sydney is your typical high school girl, but she's dealing with a dark past. The brutal murder of her mother, Maureen Prescott, just 1 year prior. Her world is already tinged with trauma and sadness. Sydney's day starts like any other. She's at school with her close friends. Tatum Riley, her best friend. Tatum's goofy boyfriend, Stu Macker. Randy Meeks, the movie buff who works at the local video store. And her own boyfriend, Billy Loomis. There's an underlying tension in the air, especially with Sydney's complicated relationship with Billy. He's been pushing her for a more intimate relationship, but Sydney isn't ready, still dealing with the emotional scars from her mom's death. That night, Sydney stays home alone. She gets a strange call. It's Ghostface. He taunts her, playing the same twisted game he did with Casey. But Sydney's tough. She fights back, barely escaping when Ghostface attacks. Just as things get dire, Billy appears at her window, conveniently at the right time. He tries to comfort her, but when he drops his cell phone, Sydney's suspicion skyrockets. Could Billy be the killer? Billy is arrested, but the next day, the police release him due to lack of evidence. Sydney's sense of safety continues to erode. She starts to question everything and everyone around her. At school, she's taunted by classmates in Ghostface costumes, a cruel reminder of the danger lurking. Even worse, a masked figure attacks her in the bathroom, reinforcing her fear that Ghostface is still out there. Meanwhile, Gail Weathers, an ambitious news reporter, arrives in town. Gail isn't just chasing a story. She's written a book about Maureen Prescott's murder, suggesting Sydney wrongly accused Cotton Weary, who is currently in jail. Gail's arrival adds another layer of tension, as Sydney resents her for exploiting her family's tragedy. Things escalate when the school closes after the murders. Principal Himbry is brutally killed, but the students don't know that yet. With classes canceled, Stu throws a big party at his house, thinking it'll be a fun distraction. But in horror movies, parties never end well. At the party, Randy lays out the rules of surviving a horror movie. It's a meta moment that Scream is famous for, highlighting the genre's tropes while still delivering genuine scares. Rule number 1, you can never have sex. Rule 2, never drink or do drugs. And Rule 3, never ever say, "I'll be right back." As the party rages on, Gail and her cameraman Kenny sneak around outside, hoping to catch something newsworthy. Inside, the tension builds. Tatum goes to the garage for more beer and meets a gruesome fate when Ghostface corners her. In a memorable and brutal scene, she's killed by the garage door as she tries to escape. Sydney and Billy retreat upstairs to talk. It's here that Sydney finally opens up, and they become intimate. But the post-romantic moment turns chilling when Ghostface strikes again. Billy is stabbed, or so it seems, and Sydney is forced to flee, running through the house in a desperate attempt to survive. Meanwhile, Randy and Stu remain downstairs arguing over the identity of the killer. Gail's cameraman, Kenny, sees Ghostface inside through a delayed camera feed. Rushing to help, Kenny meets his end when Ghostface slashes his throat. Sydney, now back inside, grabs a gun and prepares to defend herself. She finds herself face to face with Randy and Stu. Both are begging for her trust, but she's unsure who to believe. It's a moment filled with tension and uncertainty, leading directly into the big reveal. There are two killers. Billy and Stu reveal themselves as the masterminds behind the mask. It's a jaw-dropping moment. Billy, dripping with malice, explains his motive. Sydney's mom had an affair with Billy's father, leading to the destruction of his family. His need for revenge is personal, deeply rooted in betrayal and anger. Stu, on the other hand, is just as terrifying in his own right. His motive? He claims to be doing it for fun, showing just how twisted and detached he is from reality. Their dynamic is chilling. Billy is cold and calculating, while Stu is manic and unpredictable. The killers reveal their plan. They've framed Sydney's father for the murders. They even have him tied up in the closet, ready to be the scapegoat. Billy and Stu plan to stab each other just enough to look like victims who barely survived. But things quickly spiral out of control. Sydney, using her wits, manages to escape and turn the tables. She hides, using the chaos to her advantage. Meanwhile, Gail Weathers, the relentless reporter, reappears with a gun, but she's knocked out in the scuffle. Sydney takes control, calling Billy and Stu on the phone, playing their game against them. She taunts them, echoing the questions Ghostface asked her. The tension builds as she turns their own paranoia against them. In a final showdown, Sydney fights back. Billy is shot by Gail, who regains consciousness just in time. But Billy isn't dead yet. He lunges at Sydney, only for her to shoot him again, finally ending his terror. Stu isn't as lucky. In a brutal fight, Sidney drops a television on his head, electrocuting him. The scene is intense, raw, and utterly satisfying as the villains meet their gruesome ends. As dawn breaks, the nightmare is over. Sidney, battered but alive, reflects on the horror she's endured. Gail, always chasing the next big story, captures the aftermath, but even she's visibly shaken. Scream is more than just a slasher. It's a smart, layered film that plays with the rules of horror, blending suspense with dark humor. It keeps you guessing, twisting the familiar into something fresh and terrifying. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Scream. It's a story that stays with you, a chilling reminder of how fear and betrayal can twist into something deadly. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, think twice before answering the phone.